with us for a while. I still don't see her on my screen, but I'm sure
I am here, Chego.
she'll pop up quite soon.
Hello.
Thank you. Thanks, Gabriela, and welcome. Are you with Ken or you are alone today?
I should be with Ken. I don't know if he has joined already, but if he hasn't joined yet, he must be joining shortly.
All right, no problem. I'll welcome him in absentia. I'm sure that he will see the recording that I did welcome him. Thank you, Gabriela, for your submission as well to the PIOB to keep us up to date. We did have Mr. Robert Buchanan at the December meeting who had observed the meeting, and we had his observation memo, which we took into consideration as we prepared for your update today. So without any further ado, let me hand over the baton to you to take us through the update coming out of the IESBA meeting in December. Thanks.
Hey, thank you very much, Chair. As you know, the presentation touches upon 3 topics suggested by the PIOB: firm culture and governance, the role of CFOs and technology. I don't know if you want me to go through the whole presentation and take questions afterward, or if you want to stop in between, but you can let me know as we go. Yes, I'll try to be.
Sorry, Gabriela. I think I'm happy to go with the approach we had for Tom, so that after each submission, we take a small pause and we move after the questions. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Chair. So the first topic on our agenda, so the 3 topics that I intend to touch upon are exactly topics that we have discussed and on which we have made some decisions in our December board meeting. Of course, the board meeting agenda went much beyond these 3 topics, but they were 3 substantial topics that we discussed there. So on firm culture and governance, I think that this is mostly about giving the PIOB an update about where we are. The PIOB has been following this project for quite some time now, and stating the support to the project and the direction. But as you also know, we decided at some point to reduce the pace of the development of this project, given to some questions, some uncertainty, and the understanding that we needed to give stakeholders and ourselves a little bit more time to mature the project a little bit more, but also to improve communications in the sense that there were some questions about what exactly we're doing, what decisions were we making, what was the public interest that we were trying to serve, and so forth. So we decided to approach the project in a slightly different way and to develop what we call the viewpoints, about which I have already briefed the PIOB, but that I'm sure that Robert Buchanan briefed the board as well. And to engage in an intensive and extensive outreach program between January and June before we make the decision about which kind of framework are we going to develop. And this is what this slide speaks about. It's this outreach plan that we have put forward for these 6 months between January and June. It's a, so to speak, 4-pronged approach to outreach, and the idea is that we intend to cover the maximum number of stakeholders, the groups, all the groups of stakeholders, to support the solid anchoring of the decision that we will make in extensive, meaningful, practical information coming from all stakeholders, all groups of stakeholders. This will span meetings with senior leadership, focus group discussions that we are now in the process of forming, this focus group discussions, the usual stakeholder meetings, and also a simulation exercise that by December we weren't sure yet if we could put in practice, but for now it seems well, advancing well, progressing well, with already one firm stating their openness and willingness to participate, and probably a second firm, a smaller one, also wanting to engage with us. This means that we will have the usual meetings with the big groups of stakeholders. We will have one-on-ones with leadership, focus groups, with GPPC firms, small and medium firms, regulators, and also engage with investors, not with focus groups because it's a little bit more difficult with this group of stakeholders, but surely engaging with investors as well and other stakeholders. So next slide, please. For the purpose of ensuring an inclusive and meaningful and open, transparent engagement with stakeholders, and to respond to some comments that we have heard lately about sometimes it's difficult to understand what you want, sometimes you reach out to the wrong people who don't understand what you're saying, sometimes you use complex and too extensive documents. We developed these viewpoints, and these viewpoints basically are built upon the 8 elements of a future framework that we have identified in the report approved by the board in 2024 and extensively discussed in the roundtables that we organized in 2025. These 8 elements gave birth to these viewpoints, and the viewpoints are a tool, an instrument to allow us to engage, to foster a meaningful and clear dialogue with stakeholders in a very simple way, in a very short format, so that everyone is able to understand what we have in mind and what do we want to discuss. They are not a product, they are not a final product, they are just a tool, an instrument of inclusiveness and engagement with stakeholders. That's what they intend to be, and that's the instrument that we are already used after launching or publishing these viewpoints less than 2 weeks ago, or 2 weeks ago, when we were in Asia, and which were already very useful for the Asia outreach that we have been undertaking. We undertook over the last 2 weeks. So the idea of these viewpoints is really to try to get to achieve a practical and very simple and responsive tool to engage with stakeholders, to foster inclusive dialogue with stakeholders, and to get the maximum information possible, and aligning the minds and about the objectives of the project and the path to achieve these objectives. So next slide, please. The 8 viewpoints, as I said, are based on the 8 elements that we had identified as possible elements, components of a future framework. And they include, as they were presented and published, on the one hand, the public interest rationale of each one of the elements of a possible framework, and on the other hand, the features or the components or the characteristics, how you want to call it, of each one of these elements, which are considered the necessary ones to achieve the public interest outcome that we have identified for each one of the viewpoints. Of course, the idea is that they will all work together and not individually or separately to, in an integrated way, create this framework that supposedly, and that is the intention, will help firms, will help creating a global baseline, and will help firms build their own robust firm culture and governance frameworks and instruments to make them more resilient. Next slide, please. So to support this idea that we needed to engage on a significant, open, transparent, close outreach with stakeholders, we conceived this Firm Culture and Governance Dialogue series. And this dialogue series are, on one hand, a publication, but also a set of initiatives which are conceived to support global dialogue-driven, really, engagement on the organizational drivers which we consider necessary and we want to discuss of ethical behavior in accounting firms. They build on upon the IESBA's viewpoints across the 8 elements of firm culture and governance, and they aim at inviting firms, regulators, professional bodies, other stakeholders to test ideas, share experiences, and help shape a practical, principles-based global framework to strengthen the ethical culture, public trust, and long-term resilience across all service lines. The objective of this dialogue series is to seek input on what makes sense, what is relevant, How can a global FCG baseline help firms building resilience? Which location should we choose or decide for this future framework? The code or outside the code? Which level of authority? Should it be mandatory, non-mandatory, a mix of both? All these questions are still open, and that's it's on these questions that we want and seek to receive feedback from stakeholders, so that in June, and that is the objective, we make a careful, meaningful, grounded, based on practical information, decision about which kind of framework will we develop at that time. It can be one thing or the other, or a mix. That's what we are going to test with stakeholders. Next slide, please. So, since the start of this project, or when we started discussing this project with stakeholders, one question that came frequently to us at the PIOB, made it as well, was how this firm culture and governance framework intersects with ISQM1. Initially, we hadn't thought about developing a lot of work around this topic, because for us it was clear that one thing is one thing and the other thing is another thing. But we realized and acknowledged that there was some confusion and some concerns in the marketplace within our stakeholders about what does this mean for us, the firms who have already implemented or are in the course of implementing ISQM1. There were some concerns that there were some overlaps, some contradictions, that this future framework might force reopening what the firms have already done in terms of implementing ISQM1. So some concerns that we realized that we needed to respond in a clear way. So therefore, this decision to develop in close coordination with IESBA and with strong support from IESBA, this linkage document between ISQM1 and the firm culture and governance. This aims at responding very directly to stakeholder questions, PIOB questions, and even SSP questions from IESBA on how the IESBA viewpoints align with ISQM1, and what firms need to do, if anything, beyond ISQM1 to implement this framework, which is a question that does not have an answer for many reasons. And one of the reasons is that because FCG, it's not yet a framework, it's not yet, it's not a standard, but also we came to the conclusion that, well, we already had in mind that these are different things. So this document shows at a high level how the IESBA viewpoints and ISQM1 are mutually reinforcing, but at the same time it clearly distinguishes the objectives of the two, ISQM1 and the FCG, the scope, the focus, and the outputs. So with this, it does not aim or does not intend to be a like-for-like assessment and comparison between ISQM1 and FCG. Just to start, because on ISQM1 we are speaking about requirements, we are speaking about a standard, while FCG for now it's nothing, it's just a collection of ideas that we are testing. But beyond that, because the comparison is clearly showing that we are speaking about different things with respect to the scope, with respect to the focus, with respect to the outputs and the objectives, which are, in the case of firm culture and governance, really about building solid ethical culture and governance in the firms, at the firms level, to drive ethical behavior within the firms. So this is where we are. This document has already been published, and I'm sure that the PIOB has seen it. It has been submitted to the December board meeting, and there was a subsequent decision made at staff level to continue developing these viewpoints. Continue developing these documents with respect to the other viewpoints, because this initial work was made based on two viewpoints, just to have an example of how they would interact one and the other. Maybe this would be enough, but we decided to continue to work with IESBA, and very grateful to IESBA for the great support, technical and strategical support to this work, to work together to develop the comparison between the other 6 viewpoints, so that all stakeholders can have very clear how one and the other intersect, and be hopefully satisfied that the result is not concerning from the perspectives that some stakeholders and some groups were afraid of. And Chair, I think I'll stop here for now. If you want to have I am happy to take some questions. Or
thanks, Gabriela. And I see Tom is first. Tom.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Gabriela, for updating us. The one question, on the page 4, you have the 4 pillars, and then the 4th one of the simulation exercise is very new and then very interesting. You mentioned that there are a few or just 1 or 2 firms which is cooperating for this exercise, and could you clarify which area is that an Asian, or is that an US, is it an European, and then what size is that, a small medium size practitioner or large size one, or is it a multidisciplinary model, or is it focused on the assurance practice? It might be very helpful if that sort of the exercise will be, how can I say, conducted and shared with the other stakeholders, and especially the relationship of the ISQM1 and this viewpoint may be a little bit clearer if you go deeper in this exercise. So perhaps then it may be very helpful if you could share a little bit more with this exercise. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tom, and happy to clarify. So this idea of the simulation exercise started with something that I think I mentioned to the PIOB the last time we met, which was this idea of field testing. Taking it into the very practical ground and the environment, and see what works, what doesn't work, what is necessary, what is not necessary, and work with the firms directly to see which results we could achieve. Well, the field testing was very much discussed, and we have reduced our ambition a little bit to this simulation exercise, which was what was practically the only possibility that we had of doing something similar or along those lines. The simulation exercise, anyway, it's gonna take significant resources from the IESBA, from many perspectives. So we will do just what we can do, the maximum that we can do, and the maximum that we can do. After many discussions at different levels, is to field test with one big firm, GPPC one. So, you know, with all the characteristics of a big firm, with different lines of service therein, with a global, you know, sophisticated, all these things. And we will field test with a smaller company. So this one based in the UK, so Europe, and we are exploring and most probably be able to field test with a smaller firm, say medium-sized, from the Middle East. If you ask me why these choices, the choices are very candidly and very honestly, most of the times driven by the capacity and the ability that we have to reach out and receive positive responses from some firms, but of course having in mind that we needed to diversify the geographic areas. And since the Middle East is being a little bit left outside some of the initiatives, the roundtables, you know, the outreach most of the times, etc. But at the same time, they have demonstrated a strong willingness to collaborate in these areas of firm culture and governance. So we thought it would be a good idea. This is not yet completely certain. The last final decisions are still being made at that level. But for sure, what I can tell you, Tom, is that for any reason, it's not this smaller firm, we will find another one, because even if it takes a lot of resources on our side, we acknowledge that testing only with one big firm could be not enough.
Mm-hmm.
This is going to give us what is going to give us. It's the example of one firm, but well, the big one, of course, it will take the shared experience of GBPC firms. So it's a broader, I would say, sample than just the firm. The smaller firm, I think it's going to give us the idea of what is possible, what are the big obstacles, which are the big ambitions as well of these small firms, and create some kind of nudge to the others to look at this exercise and think about it. What I can tell you is that I believe that some other firms will be very happy to engage in this exercise, but the exercise needs to be facilitated by external providers. This, be very clear, has a cost, associated cost, and it takes a lot of resources from the IESBA at a point in time where we are facing some issues in terms of human resources. Some people left, others are having some issues. So this is what's possible, but I'm very happy and I'd say proud for us to have been able to put this ambition in practice of getting some more practical and concrete information coming from the firms, which may inform our decision next June. I think this will be this can be helpful for the firms as well, I believe, and that's why they are also excited to participate, but we'll see.
Okay, thank you very much.
And of course, this will cover the whole elements of the framework. So of course, directly or indirectly, ISQM1 will be brought into the discussion, but it's not, the objective is not to test ISQM1 because it's a different thing.
Thanks, Tom. Thanks, Gabriela. I don't see any further hands, and therefore I would assume we can continue, Gabriela. Thanks.
Okay. So thank you very much, Chair. Role of CFOs. This is also a project about which we have already spoken, and I remember listening to some questions on our last meeting in October or November, I think, which I'm happy to say that I think that we are in a position to respond now after the initial work that we have been doing. So next slide, please. Why this project? And I'm going to be quick because I think I have already spoken about it. But anyway, I think it's always good to remember why we are doing this project. Well, first reason, very formal, it's because it was in our strategy and our plan. It has been suggested by stakeholders, approved by everyone, and applauded inclusively. So that was a reason. But we really think that there is a public interest, underlying public interests in developing this project. And the underlying public interest is that, well, let me start from the start. We started by gathering information, and that's what we are still doing. And the initial initiative was a pulse survey, relatively restricted, but which covered, I think, 6 jurisdictions and got 150 responses. Ken is there to correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it was around 150 responses. And this initial pulse survey and the outreach that we have already been doing to date suggests, unfortunately, significant inconsistencies and raises some significant relevant questions with respect to whether CFOs or other equivalent financial professionals recognize, are able to identify ethical dilemmas and how they can be handled, whether high-quality ethical code is consistently considered and applied by the CFOs in their roles, namely the IESBA code, and some questions about the support model of the PIOs, the professional organizations, for CFOs when ethical dilemmas arise. I would say now, the support from PIOs to alert these professionals to the existence of ethical dilemmas and the need to identify them. So the combination of these factors raise risks to the public interest, which are accelerated, and this was the initial conviction, by emerging technologies such the use of AI, additional responsibilities such as regarding sustainability reporting, the dynamic and different geopolitical forces and trends, a loosening of governance regulation globally, which is something that some stakeholders have flagged already to us, namely from the corporate governance community, such as at least in some parts of the world, the focus put on growth first and foremost, and neglecting a little bit governance considerations, etc. And the involvement of CFOs more and more in strategic decision making. Maybe some CFOs will say, well, this is nothing new to me because in the past, I have already dealt with sustainability and technology and strategic decisions. And that's right, that's fine, but that's not for the majority of CFOs have seen this evolution more recently, and we need to test if the code of ethics is still fit for purpose to respond to these increased risks, ethical risks posed by the evolution of the role of the CFO. This is what we are looking for. This is what we are trying to do and trying to gather information which will tell us if we can do something, if there is something that we should do. Now, before, or maybe we can move to the next slide. It's more or less indifferent, but what I'd like to share with you now, and it's not in the slides, it's besides the input, the feedback and the insights that we got from this initial pulse survey and some outreach that the project team has already been developing, and with the board member David Ray advising this group. He was a CFO himself with a big company, so he has the experience, the background, and the understanding. Besides this outreach and what we learned from this pulse survey and this outreach, this recent outreach in Asia was very eye-opening with respect to the situation, which is probably a little bit more concerning than what we expected it to be. Well, of course, we cannot generalize and say this is the reality everywhere for all the groups and etc. But we had meetings directly with the CFOs in Singapore, in Malaysia, and in Hong Kong. And the reality is that they are very far from the awareness of the ethical duties, very far away. Some of them more than the others, but they insisted on the focus on commercial objectives to be ultimately what they need to pursue. So, putting ethics and commercial objectives like as opposites that between which they need to choose. And third conclusion, that there is a significant space for the professional organizations locally, probably, I'm not speaking about the global ones, which probably have a different approach, but the professional organizations locally have here a good space for action, because that's the conclusion that probably they are not enough aware and focusing on the issue at hand. What's the problem? The problem is that these people are the first line of defense, and this is something on which the IESBA will insist as we go, because we are always focusing on the issues related to auditors. And of course, there are issues. There are times where auditors do what they should not do. There are times where auditors don't do what they should do. But most of the time, the problem starts before. The problem starts at the preparation of the information, of the reporting moment. And there, the CFOs and other finance professionals, need to be aware of the ethical responsibilities that they have, need to be aware that there is a code. If they are PAs, if they are professional accountants, they need to abide by a code which includes clear guidance and clear requirements in terms of their behavior, and there needs to be some kind of oversight or monitoring about how they are behaving. So probably we will need to start a little bit behind the point where we thought we were going to start, but we need much more information, and we don't want to generalize this way from the conversations that we had so far, which were not, I must say, encouraging in terms of the situation, but that this makes the case for us even more important and relevant, because the IESBA has a role to play here in making sure. We don't know how, we don't know where this project will bring us, but there is something for sure that needs to be done in this space. So this is where we are, and looking at this evidence-based approach that we are taking. The outreach that is being planned is massive, and I'm going to say again, massive, in terms of including an impressive number of groups of CFO-related groups and entities. I was checking the plan this morning. I was really speechless with the number and variety of groups that are being included in this outreach. This will include some roundtables, global roundtables, some of them in person, some of them in virtually, as we usually do. But besides that, there are some other initiatives being organized, namely with PIOs, with ACCA, ICAUW, and entities in groups like this, to make sure that once we have a report and a recommendation to the board, we will do it based on extensive information gathered with groups which are not that familiar to us, because the truth is that historically CFOs have not been that much in our remit, and the result is what we see. They are very far away from these ethical responsibilities and the existence of a code. We know that there are issues related with the governance, with the codes of ethics at the company level, which don't say anything close to what the code of ethics say, because we have examined this code of ethics. They are useful, they are good, but they are for a different purpose than the IESBA code of ethics, which is for professional ethics in developing the work as a practitioner, as a preparer. So that's where we are. This slide tells you what's the plan for the next few months. Over these 2 next quarters, we will engage. We will be doing these roundtables, but many other engagement initiatives in many different formats, so that hopefully by September we will have a report from the project team making some recommendations to the board. I don't want to promise, because this is going to be really massive and difficult, and we may need to delay a little bit, but the idea and the plan is that in September we will have a report. And I'll stop here, Chair, and I'm happy to respond to any questions.
Thank you, Gabriela. I think the message is loud and clear with regards to what you've termed as the public interest focus, which is really talking to the CFO as shaping the tone at the top in terms of their key gatekeeping role in the organization. And I think you put them as the robust first line of defense against the public, against erosion of the public trust in business. And really this talks to the shaping of ethical business dealings as shaped by the tone at the top, which is the CFO in this case. Let me open, I think, the conversation to the board members, comments, questions, clarifications to Gabriela on this topic. Mark.
Okay, thanks, Shago. It is certainly true that business generally has become more complex, continues to become more complex, and with it the role of the CFO. But I think this project, in being drawn around the CFO specifically, might be too narrowly scoped, because I think it's based on a fairly old-fashioned view of the role of the CFO, that he is the one that determines the numbers exclusively, and is the sort of the first line of defence, as you say. I actually think that you need to look at accountants in business as a whole, because it's actually the ethical standards in all layers of management that need to be examined. For example, in preparing your financial statements, if we just look at that, the CFO actually has a relatively small role these days in practice, and it's much more down to controllers, chief accounting officers, and so on, who, as this project is drawn, wouldn't be included within it. Equally, you could have a CEO who is an accountant, but would not be covered by the scope of this project. So I would recommend that actually a broader view is taken, and the question at issue should be whether accountants in business generally need to have enhanced ethical guidance. And I say accountants because I think, that the name is on the tin, really, that IESBA is about ethical standards for accountants. And we need to avoid sort of mission creep here potentially into other professions where non-accountants to which IESBA standards actually wouldn't apply. So, and I welcome your views on this, but as I say, I think this should be more broadly drawn, looking at the enhancements that are required, if any. I suspect there are some for accountants in business generally, rather than just the CFO community.
May I respond, Chair?
Thanks, Mark. And yeah, Gabriela, please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mark. So, of course, we will take this comment back for consideration. We probably need to refine the scope a little bit, I agree, because the code already includes provisions for professional accountants in business, specifically about CFO. Well, it's a little bit different. And you're right that preparation of financial reporting and other reporting involves others than just the CFO, while the CFO is the ultimate responsible for that, but agree with that. On the other hand, what we are also addressing is the role of the CFO itself in its new strategic positioning, requirements, etc. And that is something that our outreach so far has confirmed as well, that CFOs are more and more being required to take part in strategic decisions, to make decisions with respect to, for instance, the kind of technology that they use, the data sources, all these things, which is for the CFO to decide, not for all the professional accountants in business. So, of course, this poses a lot of questions. We will take that comment back about the possible enlargement of the scope. But just a final comment. I know I see that Ken also wants to add something, and of course, but let me just add that with respect to the non-professional accountants in business, I'm not saying that we are going to end up this project by setting standards for non-accountants, but we cannot run away from the problem, and we need to face it. And the problem is that professional accountants in business play a significant role in business, but there are many equivalents to CFOs and preparers and etc. who are not CFO, and that's that creates a dilemma for us, because what we have heard from others is that it makes no sense, and that will not serve the public interest entirely if only part of these professionals are part of this, are covered by this standard. So we are in a very early days. These comments are very welcome, because it takes us to think broader than just the initial scope we had considered. But we are in very initial phase of the project, and we will listen to stakeholders and come back to the PIOB, of course, with the evolution of our thinking in terms of the scope of the project. And Ken, I think you, if Diego allows, I think that Ken wants to add something, which is very welcome on my side.
Yeah, I saw his hand. Ken, welcome, and please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Chigo. And I'll be very brief, just to supplement what Gabriela has said, and just to be very clear that this workstream is not focused solely on CFOs. However, we may want to define CFOs because the scoping, at least insofar as information gathering is concerned, is around CFOs and individual PIBs in equivalent senior finance roles. So these could be chief administrative officers, chief, even CEOs, so long as they have a nexus to the responsibility for the financials of the and the reporting side of the entity. So that's really something that I really just want to make sure everybody understands. But certainly the point that Mark has raised is very welcome, as Gabriel has put it, and we will take that into consideration as we further explore how we're going to cover the individuals who have the relevant roles vis-a-vis this first line of defense principle that we're looking at, this concept of first line of defense. Thank you.
Thanks, Ken. Mark, do you still want to continue, or okay?
Yeah, could I just
then I'll come to Martin after.
Yes, could I just come back on that? I think the dilemma that you talked about, Gabriela, I think actually that dilemma is caused by the fact that you've labelled this project as, you know, the role of CFOs, because that in itself creates the dilemma. If it was just talking about accountants, that dilemma wouldn't be there. And the other thing I would just add as well to my remarks is, I think before sort of proceeding too far with this project, you need to be mindful of the allocation of your resources. You know, you just said in your remarks earlier that you were speechless about the extent of the outreach that would be required for this particular project. Yet, when we were discussing the FCG project earlier, you were saying that, well, we can only really speak to 2 accounting firms because we have constrained resources. So, and there's a little bit of a disconnect there. So, I think perhaps think very carefully about the scope of this project, and also, you know, the extent of it, and whether it is appropriate or possible to go ahead with it in full at this stage compared with you know, your other priorities.
Thanks, Martin. I guess that was a comment that Gabriela will and Ken will take into consideration as well. Martin?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Gabriela and Ken, for being with us. Question just for understanding, really, from the main slides and the references there are plenty of references to lack of awareness, and to some degree, then I think the question is, and I accept where you are at the current time and beginning on this journey, but is it seen primarily as an issue of raising awareness, or is your perception that there are critical aspects of part 2 of the code dealing with professional accountants and business that are so, let's say, incapable or outdated of providing a framework for the new challenges that you anticipate or you've been hearing about in some of the countries. So is it more an awareness issue, which obviously then would raise a question about responsibility for ensuring awareness and implementation, or do you actually see there are fundamental gaps with the current code as it currently exists? Now, I think in your next topic, you're going to talk about technology, and we heard from Tom as well about there were interesting things coming from the technology side, but leaving technology for a moment, are there other gaps or points of concern within the code in relation to the treatment of professional accountants in business? Is that really a focus, or is it more the awareness issue?
Well, Martin, thank you for the question. I don't think we can respond at this point in time, because if we were to, if we had concluded that the code was not appropriate any longer, then we would decide to do standards today. And that's a decision that we cannot make based on what we know and what we have tested. What I was saying is that given the significant lack of proximity, let's call it like that. Some of them know that the code exists and they have ethical implications, but we will need to do more work in terms of understanding how the existing standards work for the purpose that we all need them to work. So I'm afraid I can't respond to you today, and that's exactly why we are doing all this outreach. There will be a survey which will be published. Can you help me? But I think that's very shortly. It will be distributed in a couple of weeks or something like that.
Next week.
Next week, a survey, but much broader survey that we will launch to gather information. The Pulse survey already gives us a little bit of a notion about where are the areas where some CFOs feel more probably unprotected, and it's true with respect to pressure, clearly, but also the use of data, the decisions to be made about data sources and etc. So there is already some indication, but the initial survey, the Pulse survey, cannot be taken for as a reliable sample, final sample for us to make decisions. So, Martin, I think that in the next meeting with the PIOB, I hope I can bring more information. But it can the evolution of the project can go in many directions depending on what we will find out. For sure, what we have realized for now is that everything is okay in this area, and that this first line of defense is being left very fragile. One thing that they speak about as well is about what they call the loneliness, because they feel, when they understand that there is an ethical dilemma, that there is a pressure, that there is something that they don't know exactly how to solve because there are two interests which are conflicting, they are alone in the company because, of course, they will not speak most of the times with the CEO because there are some tensions between the two and etc. But they don't know exactly where to go through. And that's where, for instance, the PIOs may play an important role. We don't know. The fact is that the sentiment is that something relevant needs to be done. Because otherwise you will keep the status quo, which is not taking this first line of defense seriously in terms of ethical standards, monitoring, etc., and then everything falls on the auditors because it's a more regulated space, with more oversight, with more visible, more scrutiny, and every time there is a problem, you look at the auditor and ask, where was the auditor? And many times, rightly enough, but nobody asks, where was the preparer? Where was the CFO that started the problem that then the auditor had to deal with? So it's this value chain that we need to address properly to make sure that the responsibilities are addressed at the right level.
Thanks, Martin, and thanks, Gabriela. I note that we are 12 minutes to the end of your presentation, Gabriela. Do you want to move on to the last bit? Thanks.
Sure, thank you very much, Chiego. So the last bit is on technology. And I think I'm going to be quick. As the PIOB knows, the IESBA issued standards on technology 2 years and something ago. I think it was December 2023. And issued over this multi-year effort between 2018 and 2022 significant technology-related materials, thought leadership pieces, guidance materials, etc. Some of them in collaboration and partnership with other global partners, etc. So the work was significant and extensive and solid, I would say, already. And after December 2023, what the IESBA decided was to keep technology under monitoring, but we needed to allocate the resources to other things after issuing all these materials and being satisfied that we had done a good job with these standards and these thought leadership materials. This doesn't mean that the IESBA has been not doing anything in that respect. It's just less visible, and probably we need to give it a little bit more visibility, but also, of course, increase a little bit the attention once 2 years and something have passed since the issuance of these standards and of the technology related pieces, thought leadership pieces. So next slide, please. So the IESBA technology work stream is distributing its attention and its efforts among several initiatives and areas, updating non-authoritative material and issuing or preparing new non-authoritative material. We have just launched the podcast. I don't know if the PIOB members had the opportunity to see it, but the first episode of the IESBA Decoding Ethics, I think it's the name of the podcast, has already been issued, and we are about to issue the second episode of this podcast. The first one was based on the IESBA conference in Lisbon in September 2025. We have a technology experts group with whom we work together very closely, and they work like, on the one hand, like a sounding board, but they are bringing any new technological issues to us that may deserve some attention on our end, and doing this environmental scanning by the staff. The coordination with the IESB on this topic has been continuous. More recently, we have been intensifying this coordination. But before I speak about it, let me just go very quickly through. You can move the slide. Thank you very much. We are moving to some new initiatives where we will coordinate with IESB as needed, of course. I'd like to highlight that we have in preparation an IESBA staff alert, which will at some point in time be issued, I hope, on disruptive emerging technologies. And this can be the first of a series of staff alerts based on the experience that we had with the private equity investment staff alert, which worked perfectly for our stakeholders. It was timely, it was effective, and raised a lot of interest and attention. So we think that in similar topics, we could take a similar approach by issuing these staff alerts. These staff alerts will be on disruptive emerging technologies, and then there will be two other ones, I hope, on the use of ethics and artificial intelligence, one for PIIBs and another one for PAPPs. We have also been engaging in some external or outreach initiatives. Just to give you some examples, so the IESBA conference had this panel on technology. There was something last year during the Nordic Federation of Accountants where we had a specific panel on technology where the IESBA also presented. We participated on a joint conversation with the ACCA. So we are taking these opportunities to promote a little bit the standards and the work that we have been doing, but also to create new opportunities to discuss the relationship between ethics and AI, ethics and technology, which is top of mind for many professionals these days. So this is on top of what we did before and that we intend to update as needed. The topics that we are also planning to cover and starting to cover and work upon, it's the ethical challenges and opportunities from the use of artificial intelligence, and digital assets, which is something to which our stakeholders have been directing us very frequently and more intensively over the last times, mainly I think in Hong Kong. They are very interested in the topic. IOSCO is also starting to cover this topic, and sooner or later we will need to do some work on it. And the impact of quantum computing, which is a very difficult topic, but seems of relevance also from the perspective of the ethical issues that it raises. And last slide, finally, of course, this all is being done with in coordination with IESBA, ongoing coordination, and this coordination happens in very many ways. We mutually observe the meetings of our respective consultative groups, advisory groups, and etc. So there is always a representative of the IESBA on the IESBA meetings, and vice versa. We have regular meetings at the staff level. At the SAC, the Stakeholder Advisory Council, we had the opportunity to present jointly on the technology-related topics for ethics and audit. And we may be exploring some joint non-authoritative material in 2026, besides the regular updates between the two boards on the technology initiative. So what I wanted to reassure the PIOB about is that this coordination is being taken very seriously. I think that Tom and Billy, I don't know if they are still here, but they can confirm that, and they both mention it in their presentation. Working together every time it makes sense, but for sure monitoring, ongoing the monitoring of both boards' work, so that we can early identify any possible contradictions, overlaps, inconsistencies, or need to refine some kind of integrated approach with respect to specific topics. We are not leaving that unattended. On the contrary, very carefully and proactively monitoring the developments and monitoring the work of both boards, so that we can take proactive action in case it is necessary to coordinate our activities and our initiatives and our work. And I'll stop here. Thank you.
Thank you, Gabriela. Board members, comments, questions on this important topic of technology? Mark.
Yeah, I just had a question. In 2023, amendments were made to the code itself in respect of technology. In all that you're proposing now, you only mention NAM and not amendments to the code in respect of these further technological developments, AI, quantum computing, etc. But what's the sort of rationale behind that change of approach to go for NAM rather than standard setting?
Well, Mark, I'm not sure I fully understood your question, but there was no change of approach. In 2023, we issued standards, and so far we have been monitoring the developments and the environment, but we have not faced any situation or conclusion that the standards that we issued need to be amended, or that we need to issue more standards. That's not what we have concluded so far. Doesn't mean that this may not happen in this environmental and technical monitoring. We can come one day to that conclusion, but so far we are satisfied that the standards that we issued can still respond properly, strongly to this new or evolving ethical challenges. Now, what we may be missing is a more intensive and extensive sharing of these standards and of what they mean and the responses that they include to our stakeholders. So it's really, if you want, an extended rollout of the standards. And I don't think that anything until now, I'm sure that until now, the board has not at all faced any concrete situation which says, well, the code does not have an appropriate response. If we come to that conclusion, of course, we will start a new standard setting project and we will develop new standards. Hopefully that will not be the case so soon, given all the comments that we have been receiving about the need to lower the pace of standard setting, and we have committed not to issue any standards until 2027. But in this case, it's not really because we have made that commitment. It's really because we haven't come to the conclusion. We don't have any evidence that the code is not responding to the challenges and the needs of the market in terms of ethical dilemmas and issues posed by the use of technology. I don't know if I responded to your question.
You have. Thank you very much. Very clear.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Gabriela. I guess Ken's hand went down. I thought he wanted to add something. No. Ken?
No, that's okay. Gabriel has essentially addressed the question. Really, the point I wanted to make was essentially that the standard, the revisions to the code that the board issued in 2023 just came into effect December 24. So it's still very early days, and the revisions have all been developed on a principles basis. So very much designed to be enduring, and they've been developed with full view and understanding of the developments that were occurring already at the time, especially in the space of artificial intelligence. So I think we're all up to date, so to speak, but we're maintaining a very close monitoring watch on developments in the marketplace, and of course we'll be as responsive as possible the moment we identify any sort of gaps in the code, as Gabriel has put it.
Thanks, Ken. Any other thoughts? We have completed the hour for Gabriela. If there's no other hands, let me take the opportunity to thank Gabriela and her board and Ken and team in delivering this update to us today, and acknowledge the progress they are making throughout their various, these key 3 ones that they presented today. Thank you, Ken. Thank you, Gabriela. Much appreciated.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to all of you, and above all to those for whom it's so late, like Tom and Hanmi. I'm sorry for that. Thank you very much for your patience. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you.